In today's video, we're going to be taking a look here at these current conditions. There is a lot more storminess today than there has been in days past. We kind of expected this in the upcoming pattern. However, there is some bigger news regarding those big nor'easters that we do anticipate along the East Coast. More coastal snowfall than we've seen at any point suggested this winter is going to be suggested later on in this video, and a lot more cold air than even in the last couple of days. So there's a lot to go over, a lot that a lot of you are probably excited about, but we're going to have to wait till later on in the video to take a look at that. Right now, let's take a look at this bigger storm out west. This is exactly what we said would be happening most likely, and sure enough, this is taking place. We see just a lot of precipitation moving onshore of all of the west coast of the United States. And you can totally tell that this is elevation based, just like most west coast storms. We have rainfall here happening along the coastal regions in the valleys here, even up into Canada there. And then for the more mountainous regions here, like the Olympic Mountains, the Cascades here, and then the Sierra Nevadas as well. So all these mountain ranges, even the Rockies as well down here, we're seeing snowfall in all of these higher elevation areas. And I will say, as we zoom in and take a look at these individual pockets, we can see very heavy snowfall for these mountain ranges taking place, especially the Olympic Mountains here, actually seeing just tons and tons of snowfall here. And as we work our way further south towards the Sierra Nevadas, we can see this is picking up down here as well, because we were seeing mostly the grays and whites, and now we're seeing mostly the whites and the blues, which is meaning this is really picking up in intensity, likely whiteout conditions taking place over there along the western United States. A little bit lighter as you work your way further inland here, but certainly still heavy in those wider pockets there. Now, as we take a look at some of these areas in the south central United States, you can see there is some storminess taking place in this pocket here. Even what looks to be potentially thunderstorms along in Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas as well underneath here. So I'll take a look at some of these pockets in here. Definitely look like some thunderstorms flaring up in this area, even just to the west of the Dallas-Fort Worth area as well. We're seeing these flare up. And then for Arkansas into southeastern Oklahoma here, it looks like these have kind of picked up in intensity through the morning hours as well. As we work our way northward here, we can see there is a bit of snowfall happening here in between Wisconsin and Minnesota here. Mostly just snowfall showers, moderate to slightly heavy, I would say. Not whiteout conditions, but certainly pretty heavy in some spots. And then we have some spotty showers along the East Coast, actually, that have been taking place. Even snowfall here in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and West Virginia, perhaps, but that has kind of died down over the last few hours. Now, what we're going to do is move on, and we're going to take a look at that exciting upcoming pattern where there's just a whole lot to go over, like I mentioned before. Now, here we are taking a look at the upcoming storminess here, and as we can see, by the time we're reaching about this evening into tomorrow morning, we can see this storm has dipped down further into the southwest. So we see California, Nevada, Oregon, and Idaho mostly seeing that snowfall down there in the west. The Sierra Nevadas maybe even having heavier snowfall expected tonight than they are seeing currently. Which is crazy to think about. We have snowfall showers across the northeast here and the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes region as well. And then for the deeper south, we have some rainfall happening underneath still by tomorrow morning. By the time we're reaching about Monday, or let's call it Tuesday afternoon, we see this low develops here for Kansas and Nebraska, bringing this surge of thunderstorms and potential severe weather there for Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Nebraska here on Tuesday. Behind it, it's bringing a lot of snowfall and cold air, and the frontal boundary is going to be right in between this air mass. So that's what's really causing a lot of our severe weather potential, and also the cold air right behind this low. Very classic setup we're seeing here. By the time we're reaching Wednesday afternoon, a lot of that potential severe weather would be located where this precipitation is. We see a big cold front right in here, low right here. Plenty of snowfall happening in the north still, so very, very heavy snowfall with this snowfall event, major storm in general. And then what we see happen here is where things get really interesting. We start out as some mixed precipitation or perhaps freezing rain there in the east. As we just move on a couple of hours towards Thursday afternoon, that's just going to be the 15th, 5 days from now. We see plenty of snowfall happening for Michigan, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, even West Virginia there as things are still mixing over. That's the high temperatures. As we can see, by the time we're reaching about 6 or 8 p.m. here, we can see that snowfall is really picking up and things are cooling down here. So Pennsylvania, let me just take an eastern view if I can here. Let's just do this, because this storm really needs to be we need to, really look at the fine details here, but we see that there is snowfall happening in all of these corridors here now. Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New York, even northern New Jersey here, seeing a lot of that heavier snowfall. And as we move towards approximately 6 or 8 a.m. there on Friday the 16th here, we can see this low is now moving offshore as a 990 millibar low pressure center, still bringing heavy snowfall to a lot of these areas there. As we just bring it a couple of hours in advance, what we see is a lot of cold air rushing down. And this is what's going to allow, on this particular model run, for snowfall to start really happening down for the Smoky Mountains and way further south. So we're seeing most of Virginia there, seeing heavy snowfall, most of Maryland, D.C., Baltimore. We're seeing Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. All of these classic areas seeing very, very heavy snowfall. And this is not particularly long range either. This is only 7 days out here by this point. The storm starts at about day 5. Certainly within reasonable range, I would say. And we see just the storm just kind of slips off the coast, becomes a 979 millibar low pressure center, and still bringing very heavy snowfall in this corridor here. Very, very interesting scenario. And it continues to trend southeast, which if you know things about these models, you know that that is typically the other way around. Usually these storms trend northwest, not southeast. But this one in particular has been trending southeast over the last few days, and especially the last few model runs. It's officially over by the 18th Sunday morning there, and we're pretty much left with here. I just clicked South America, so that's why I did that. We're left with a quieter pattern afterwards, although some colder air is able to make its way in here, and we see we're fully blown in a pattern like this. So we will be left with cold air afterwards is the expectation as that cold front swings through and allows the cold air to finally enter in. And we get that big snowstorm along that cool down developing. And then now we have this activity picking up here, which could eventually try to become a nor'easter. When you see this activity in this corridor, that's definitely a sign of potential for coastal storms eventually. So we will be watching for that threat as well. Again, tune in with us daily as we will go over this every single day and continue to keep you guys up to date with it. The total precipitation through the next 10 days looks a little bit like this. The whites are practically no precipitation. Your grays, 1/10 of an inch or less. Your greens, 1/10 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. Your blues, 1/2 an inch to an inch. Yellows, 1 inch to 2 inches. Reds, 2 to 5 inches of precipitation there. We see a lot here for the west, obviously, with a lot of that storminess we're seeing. And then we see a lot in the deeper south up the east coast with that more coastal storm that we end up seeing. Now, total snowfall through the next 10 days. Extreme amounts in the east. We will zoom in there in just a minute. Obviously, all of that coming from that one snowstorm practically. In the grays, we're expecting a dusting, if anything. Blues, 2 to 6 inches of snowfall. Purples, 6 to 10 there. Pinks, 10 to 20 inches. And then your pastel blues, 20 to 35 inches of snowfall. And then your pastel pinks, like we see there in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California, that's going to be 35 to 48 inches plus. Let's take a zoomed in look again towards the east here on this this frame as well. We can see we get a lot of snowfall here, obviously, from this one snowstorm. We see in the pinks 10 to 20, like I said. So 10 to 20 for Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, northern Virginia there. A lot of Maryland, a lot of West Virginia. Certainly a lot of 10+ inch areas here. And then we see in the pastel blues, like we see for central and northern Pennsylvania there into southern New York, and even western Massachusetts there, we get into the 20-inch plus area here. And I can tell you right now there's a maximum of 38.9 inches being indicated by the European model here somewhere in northern Pennsylvania. Certainly just an extreme amount of snowfall there on this model run. So certainly something that needs to be watched, an extremely major snowstorm that this model is indicating. And it's not too far out, so we do have a lot of action potentially on the way. Now quickly, let's take a breather. Let's just take a look at the temperature pattern real quickly and see what we're expecting. Now, this southeast ridge is going to continue to play its role for a lot of the eastern half of the nation, but we can see that a lot of the northeast and the southeast and mid-Atlantic here is going to get a lot of this cold air surging down the east coast. And I've looked at the upcoming pattern overall for the east coast, in particular for my area, and there's no warm in sight really, even though the southeast ridge is there. We're getting this kind of localized cold air, as you can see, that is continuing to play its role just along the east coast here. But these more inland areas seeing this warm air surging and a classic negative P&A pattern here taking place out west, and that's what's forcing that warm air to move around that cold air mass. It's really going to stick this way until we reach about Friday, and this is when we see a lot of cold air starting up for these areas, just like this. We still see some warm air kind of hanging out to the north, and then we get even colder by the time we're reaching Friday afternoon here. This is when some snowfall would be possible for a lot of these areas in here. Keep that in mind as well. And then we see even colder air trending in for Saturday into Sunday. There would still be some snowfall happening along the east coast here during this time frame. Not in this area I circled, but there's just cold air in this area. So things continue to get colder and colder. And then towards the end here, it looks like there's a much more major Arctic blast on its way right towards the end as we're approaching right around the 20th here. This model is really indicating some deeper cold areas because the greens are going to be about 10 to 15 degrees below whatever your average temperature is. The blues within those greens are going to be about 15 to 25 degrees below whatever your average temperature is. And then those magentas are going to be 25 to 35 degrees below whatever your average temperature is. So certainly very far departures potentially on the way. This is obviously something we need to take with a grain of salt because this is very extreme. But if this was to happen, this would be very, very major Arctic blast. Certainly the coldest air of the year. Now, anyway, be sure to subscribe as we will go over this every single day and get to the bottom of this. This stuff that is at the end of the model run will eventually be, in the very near future, so we have to just go over it every single day. You can also hit that bell icon for daily notifications when we do upload. Also, like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I will see you guys in the next video.